Hey everyone, so it's time for the Warcraft news. I'm just going to jump right into it with patch 10.0.7, which has hit the public test realm. And it did that on the very same day that 10.05 launched, which technically means there were two PTRs up at the same time, which sure does bode well for the pace of development overall in this year. So that's quite nice. Now we've got our first preview of the Orc and Human Heritage armor that will be coming, with the extra detail that there'll actually be a few different variants of these, which I think would be good. I'd like to see a lot more than just Stormwind, a lot more than just an Orc Grunt, like maybe a Lordaeron set, maybe sort of other things going on. They did say that there would be variants though, so let's hope, I suppose. Now this patch will also allow Goblins, Lightforged Draenei, and Worgen to be monks. There's going to be a refresh of the Recruit a Friend system with some new rewards, and also the Return to the Forbidden Reach, which basically will be new max level content with new bosses, more loot, more storms, plus a narrative component that will lead us into 10.1. And also, based on one of our recent videos' comments, yeah, I think I'm realizing that a lot more of you were actually doing storms than we thought. So I guess if I am in that bubble of group content people who don't really do storms, just let me know again down in those comments. It was interesting to read. But okay, now for this week in Dragonflight, where there is quite a lot going on and a lot of us are hitting a big power spike. One thing first though, want to call out what's going on our Patreon, because it's almost at the end of the month, so if you want what's going on with our big old bundle of merch, then hey, we got cool stuff. We got the first time we've ever done a journal, also the new really awesome lantern pin with a new style, and a whole bunch of other goodies as well. And I'm also planning a big wave of digital content over there, because Pale Beyond's coming out next month. I'll talk about that properly, but boy howdy, it's a busy time, and with your support, we've actually got a new member of staff starting on the 1st of February, so I'll talk about that on a vlog on Patreon over the weekend. Okay, let's get into some of this news then. Right, 10.05 is out, which means you can start collecting your white and grey transmog items, both for your collection and the auction house. For a start there's actually vendors in Stormwind and Orgrimmar who sell the original class starter gear. Okay, next we've got the new Primalist Future event. So when this is active, there's going to be 4 Primalist portals dotted throughout the Primalist Future zone, filling their progress bars a bit like capturing something in Eye of the Storm that will basically trigger waves of enemies that need to be defeated, and when you have destroyed all 4 portals, the boss will summon in at the middle of the zone. Defeat the boss, you'll complete the event. Now the mobs and the bosses slain during this event will yield both Essence of the Storm and Elemental Overflow, which are used to purchase rewards. However, as long as you're in the Primalist Future area, you're going to be inflicted with a freezing debuff that causes damage. To rid yourself of this, either equip new gear from that event, or deploy the field deployable heat source, which is available from a vendor at the base. Now, they've also revamped the Primal Invasion and War Mode Epic gear. These now upgrade via item upgrade NPCs, instead of the vendors where you would hand in the blue version of the gear plus some currency in order to get the epic version. Okay, other things then. A nice bonus is that new reverse dragon riding races have been added with a quest at Skytop Observatory. Furthermore, XP, Rep, Bag, Micro, Bar, and Armor Durability UI elements are all on the edit mode, and also the trading post arrives on the 1st of February, and the Warcraft Twitter account confirmed to Mr. GM that your, as we now call them, tendies, Trader's Tender, which is the currency that you'll earn, that will carry over from month to month. Okay, let's get into other things though. The Revival Catalyst. It is here, and to get it, just head to the top of the Seat of the Aspects and speak to Watcher Coronos. Complete the weekly quest to receive your initial charge of the Catalyst, which will of course be accrued on all of your alts and is spent like separately on each character, so yeah. Don't worry, it's uber alt-friendly. A quick tip though, the Elite World Quests grant 20% progress each, and quest progress carries through all of your alts, right? Because it's count-wide, so this actually means you can finish it up extremely quickly. Okay, the next thing then is the Sparks of Ingenuity. It is a big week for crafted gear. First up, the final challenge of Tier Quest is there. Now, it's not as quick. You've got to attune Iridius's power core that you got from the Halls of Infusion last week to elite mobs that are in and around Tierholt. Now, unless you start channeling the item on the mob at the exact same time as somebody else, unfortunately, this is a one per person progress, bringing us back to the days of, fighting over mob spawns like it's classic. And also, you get 20 energy per elite, but you need 103 energy in total. So, thanks for the final 3. That was a nice touch. At the end of the quest, then, waits for you the infinite source of sparks, because complete it, and you'll be rewarded with your 5th spark plus the essence detector. And with the essence detector, sparks will just come your way by playing the game. There's no limit to how many you can acquire, and already some players have gained 2 or 3 sparks in a single day. So you could be incredibly lucky and really get a lot of your crafted slots filled up pretty damn quick, though of course the various different, Primalist cores, those may be the limiting factor. I know a lot of players want those to be bind on account, but of course that is not the case as of yet. But I do have some good news for alts, which is that you can completely skip the entire quest chain and instantly get 5 sparks plus the essence detector, assuming that your alt hasn't started the original quest line. So finish that in your main, and at the very least, all your alts can just zoom all the way up, which will be dead handy. Unfortunately, though, we do have a little bit of a downgrade that's happened. The good news is you can work around it, though. So we don't know whether this is intended or not, because it wasn't mentioned in any official post from Blizz. But basically, there is a CVAR called Nameplates Show Only Names. And this would allow you to show friendly nameplates, but without the related health bar and cast bars. That's been removed in 10.05. Now, this was basically used by people to more clearly show the names of players in your party and raid. Text only was easier to see, and you could also have it be class colored, right? Which was great. It didn't show a character's title or guild. This is just something people found useful. Now, I do have some good news. This script here, if you type that in, that will basically register the CVAR, and that will allow you to swap its value to 1 using an add-on like Advanced Interface Options, but hopefully they just do fix this up. Okay, it's nerf time. So, with the recent hotfix to Thundering, tanks no longer will be required to clear the debuff on other players in the group, because tanks will always get the red debuff, and there's always going to be 3 of those spread around the group, meaning that the tank need not be involved in clearing the debuff. So that is really nice for tanks on Thundering. Next then, we have got more Mythic Plus hotfixes, and yes, of course, they're nerfs. A load more nerfs were hotfixed in earlier in the week, including some big ones to the Halls of Valor and the Knockhood Offensive. Okay. They also then fixed an issue on Vexamus in Algathar Academy, where you could effectively remove most of the boss's mechanics and incoming damage by just going out of line of sight. So, no more tomfoolery with that. Halls of Valor then. Right, both mini-bosses before Herja have had their health reduced by 25%. Those always feel slow, so that will smooth things out, make it a bit quicker, especially in Fortified. Herja's 10% health nerf is also there, and quite welcome, especially on Tyrannical Keys, where the AoE phase can become pretty damn dangerous. All 4 of the mini-bosses in Odin's throne room at the end of the dungeon have had their health reduced by 20% too, which is a godsend, so that's great. And also a tip, and I only just learned this today, you can make this much quicker by picking up the Mug of Mead item from the feast tables before heading to the final room. You can use those on one of the mini-bosses and then activate and drag the other nearby mini-bosses on top of it. This will make the one that you threw the mead at attack the active one, so that's pretty nice. And good news for those of you who weren't a big fan of the Scovald RP, it has been massively nerfed, saving you about 19 seconds. So, good for M+. Then the 20% nerf to the periodic damage of Runic Brand from Odin is quite welcome, especially on those tyrannical weeks, because it would do quite a lot of damage at a time where everybody's already, dodging orbs, trying to spread out, find their runes, so healing could be a little bit of a bastard on that one. Now, of course, we will have to see how these all pan out, but there is an interesting bit of trivia. Back in Legion, this had a 45-minute timer, but now it's a 38-minute timer. So what's that about? Relative balance, familiarity with the dungeon, or maybe just the WoW community just being really bloody good at the game by this stage. Okay, not good offensive. Static Spears 30% AoE damage nerf, in addition to it not preferring to target the same person for subsequent casts, is going to make the last phase of Balakar Khan feel much less dangerous and one-shotty, especially on those high keys or tyrannical weeks. Ancestral Bond now only applying whenever Tira and Maruk are 15 yards apart instead of 10 is also really nice, especially whenever they leap or charge from each other, because it can then be quite difficult to group them back together, again, depending on spell, queuing, and overlaps, and all that jazz. So, there you go. Some good news there, I think, for the dungeons. But there are some bugs going on. You'll have picked that up in our winners and losers video, especially though it is happening to the druids. Kind of unfortunate. The 10.05 changes, like for Feral, here's a fun one. When they use Rake when in stealth, it'll just crash their game. So that was quite cool. Dakro on our team, but not raiding with us because he's raiding Mythic. Well, their guild had a druid crashing regularly when they were doing their weekly plus 20 clears. As for us, I think Matt had that happen once or twice, but overall Matt was okay during our raid. So, yeah, there you go. Next up then, we do just have to step into the dramatic. Right, some drama then. So here's Brian, who's the engineering lead on World of Warcraft Classic, a pretty, publicly seen member of that team, and he's been fired over protesting a mandate known as stack ranking that came directly from Activision Blizzard King, i.e. it came from the corporate parent company, not Blizzard Entertainment, the business unit of Activision Blizzard that is ran by Mike Ybarra. So, this is a technique which General Electric introduced in the 1980s that involves employees being placed on a bell curve with a developing rating being given to people at the bottom of that bell curve, and that would be considered a bad rating that would lower people's bonuses and, of course, reduce their chances of, getting a promotion or that kind of thing. But the problem here is that managers were forced to mark at least 5% of their teams as developing, regardless of whether the manager felt that that team member actually deserved that. Now, yes, we all know there will be different spans of performance within a team, and there will be a bottom 5%. But if that bottom 5% is actually pretty good, or maybe has an explainable reason for why things have been a bit tricky, to a manager, it's going to feel pretty bad that they just need to screw over their team members and literally reduce their pay just because the 5% is mandated. Now, we can all see the idea here, right? But in reality, what it does is it incentivizes employees not to work well with each other because they're being pit against each other for compensation. And it also encourages people to find a poorly performing team that they can work in, because then they'll look good in comparison. And these are not things that are good for overall performance. Basically, it's a bit like an anti-pattern, right? It's much like, say, maybe a good example is those factory quotas that were there in the Soviet Union, where if your factory delivers on quota, does a really good job one year, then your next year's quota would just be higher, which would encourage people to lowball their productivity because they didn't want to set themselves up for even more work, right? Bad. So Brian was actually asked to keep this policy secret from his team. Now, the other WoW team leads had been trying to work around this over the last 2 years, even trying to give themselves the developing rating to fill the quota, but they were not allowed to do that by management. And according to a pretty scathing internal email from Brian, this, as I said, encourages people to compete with each other, to sabotage one another's work, desire to find those low-performing teams that they can look good on, and ultimately it erodes trust and destroys creativity. So that's Brian's take on it, and ultimately he refused, and he basically communicated to his people, look, if it is going to be like this, I intend to leave. And then he found that he was removed from his Blizzard credentials. Anyway, so he's gone, and his strong principles are to blame. And ultimately, here's the problem. Blizzard is not rewarding principled, capable people like Brian who want to do the right thing for their team. That's not the sort of person who's going to be going up the corporate hierarchy, right? This is the last thing you'll want to do, right? This is bad for attracting and retaining top quality staff. This is so absurdly short-sighted. And we know it is something that is being applied to the team making the game that we all like right now. We may be happy about 10.05, we may be happy about 10.07 being on the horizon, but we now know that like at least 5% of the like 700 odd people on that team are going to be screwed. And look, maybe some people really do deserve that developing ranking, that's fine. But the problem is the way it's being implemented, and that it is basically a mandatory quota. I mean, hell, stack ranking is actually one of the things put forward as being a contributing factor to the famous lost decade of Microsoft. Of course, that would be, the sort of decade before Satya Nadella came into the company, and it's kind of funny because Microsoft wants to acquire Activision Blizzard, and here's Activision Blizzard doing the stack ranking, something that Microsoft pivoted away from. Again, I would just say, look at, think about this almost like, a selection pressure. This is just a stupid lions led by donkeys situation. It's the usual thing that happens when an organization loses sight of its front line and it's got to rely on spreadsheet jockey bullshit mandates that wholly cut out the human element. And guess what? Features are worked on by humans, right? Often not by humongous teams of humans. So the trickle-down dysfunction of policies like this will literally hurt the smaller teams that are actually developing features for the game. There is a reason that this is a system that's commonly known as just being shit. It's kind of depressing that this is going on. Per what Brian said, this is just a literal mandate from Activision Blizzard corporate, and they can't do anything about it. My hope is that in losing a very prominent person on everybody, all of us plastering this all over the internet, now that it kind of has broken and went public, that at least this will give ammunition to people who want to push back up the chain against this because they don't like it. Okay, a little bit of drama then. It kind of blew up, but I just want to talk about it. So, there's an achievement. If you complete the Traveler's Log for 12 months, by the way, not 12 in a row, just 12, then you'll seemingly unlock this transmog set. Right now, it's kind of unconfirmed, but the icon sure does match this set of very nice Warden-themed armor that really does match the completion reward for the first month of the trading post. Now, the closest analogy to something like this in the game is the Violet Proto-Drake, which is obtained by getting every holiday meta achievement in the game, which of course takes a year, and it's been like that, at least since, I think Wrath of the Lich King. Now, that is actually more punishing, because if you say miss Brewfest, you're going to have to wait an entire other year to get the Proto-Drake. So, in my head, these were similar enough, both being mounts that you get from completing a bunch of events over an extended period of time. But that did seem to draw a little bit of ire, and I think people are kind of pissed off seeing this as a bit of a transparent retention mechanic, but I guess it's just weird that there's like a lot of anger sort of floating around there over this, when there doesn't appear to be for the Proto-Drake. This is just encouraging regular participation in the game, which is, of course, in line with World of Warcraft's business model. Holiday rewards are kind of aligned with that. Patch content is aligned with that. Ahead of the curve mounts like so much. So I guess the question is, does this feel manipulative or exploitative? And ultimately, I don't think that it does. There's zero way to undercut this with cash or gold. And there's certainly misconceptions fueling the anger. Lots of people told me that this is not like the Violet Proto-Drake because you get it for just logging in. And that's literally untrue. You get this by completing your Traveler's Log 12 times, and that means doing the little challenges. Now, each month's log has got, I think, a staple of regular things like professions, PvP, dungeons, raids, world content, but also a category of like special challenges or goals that corresponds to the theme of that month. You know, seeking out NPCs, emoting at NPCs, doing things off the beaten path. Hardly a thrill, hardly super fresh content, but very much not a login reward. So what is or is not acceptable then? I mean, I would certainly take something like this over a 6-month or 12-month subscription mount. I mean, this is earned in the game. In the grand scheme of things then, compared to other MMOs out there, I really do not think that this is something that's worth getting angry over. I would perhaps, though, put forward that giving us the Warden mount as the completion reward in the first month, and then this bit of armor being in month 12, I would say that's the bit that doesn't feel particularly good. Finally then, we have got new novel content coming out for the game. Right, there's quite a few Warcraft IP books that are releasing this year, from a children's ABCs of Azeroth book to a Codex of the Dragons and a proper expansion tie-in novel. There's also a brand new Exploring Azeroth book on the horizon where Chen and Lili will be taking us across Pandaria. Now, the tie-in novel to the expansion is a bit weird though. Initially, the listing suggested it was a prequel, and it was delayed from November 2022, so pre-launch, to October 31st this year, which I'm guessing is like patch 10.1.5? And also the prequel name is not there. So I suppose make of that what you will. It not being a prequel novel is good. It really didn't feel like a humongous prequel was needed, but maybe they'll want to flesh out those, those like years of what happened in Azeroth. I mean, the bit of me full of hopium says maybe to set it up so they can do a world revamp in 11.0, but hey, maybe that's just some wishful thinking. But okay, look, that's it for me today. For the final things, The Pale Beyond comes out next month. You can check out the launch trailer over on the Bellular Studios YouTube page. And also, if you're over on Patreon, we do have a big old stack of loot. The things that I've got to hand right now are the quest journal, and of course, the gorgeous lantern pin. We've really changed the art style for our pins. I absolutely love how they've turned out this time around. And I'll be filming a vlog to get all of you guys up to date and things. They'll be up on Patreon over the weekend. Okay, so that's it from me. I hope you enjoy the patch. I guess as a final note, I'll say I've not played much of the patch. I've just logged in for raid night, and boy howdy, those discipline priest changes. Now I'm using Shadow Covenant, and oh my god, all the numbers are bigger, and it's really fun, and we're progressing on Egg Lady Heroic, and it's fun, but wow, the difficulty curve certainly has went up for her. Anyway, no, the raid's been an absolute blast. I certainly do need to get to everything else, though. Anyway, have a great weekend. See you next time.